Hey guys, this is a sketchbook update video. This is where we left off, I think in the last drawing maybe I talked about in my last vlog. So this first sketch is, I started out with a reference of my daughter, just kind of messing around. I was having a hard time coming up with ideas, so I figured I'd draw a bunch of different stuff. I'm really working on referencing stuff to get more character in my characters, I guess. So a lot of these sketches you'll see are a lot of reference work. I just drawing random stuff, working on different types of fairies, different face shapes, working on some goblin ideas, and then some random creature ideas. This little guy at the top here is pretty cool. I like the way he turned out. Really different, one eye at the top of his head. But yeah, this is the first kind of drawing in that sketchbook where I'm just like, I don't know what to draw. I'm going to come up with some random ideas and put them down on paper. I'd never draw like stuff like this. I've been drawing figures and people so much that I've always neglected drawing landscapes and scenery and stuff like this. And this stuff is really fun to draw too. I just never really got into it a whole lot, and I really enjoyed doing this one. And I knew I needed to do some landscapes and castles for my story that I'm working on. It's a deficiency that I have in drawing, so I'm making an effort to draw stuff like this a lot more, and it was really fun to do. So it's definitely something like if you're somebody who likes to draw cartoon characters all the time, force yourself to draw other things. You know, draw from reality, draw portraits of realistic people. It'll get you better at drawing your cartoons, I guarantee it. This was an off day where I was forcing myself to draw. I didn't know what to draw, so I was like, well, I'll draw figures and I'll maybe try some different angles, maybe some different poses for the male. Just an off day. I drew my own hand and just kind of scribbled stuff out. Even if like this page is an important page because I feel like pages like this get you a lot better at drawing, because I wasn't trying to draw a pretty picture here. I'm just sketching, I'm just putting ideas on paper, I'm just working at drawing. Like this angle of the face, how he's looking up like this is something I don't draw a whole lot. How low you are on this guy and how his arm really comes out like this. Drawing his hand in a different perspective like that gets me better at drawing. Drawing my own hand like this, like just doing it from reality, like how do my fingers work like that, you know? These type of pages, even though they don't look good and they're not the greatest drawings in the world, these are the type of things, if you can do them every day, you will get so much better at drawing. Here are some, these are some character designs I did. This was, if you saw the Crow Goblin video, these were ideas I had for that, that I was working on. Ultimately, I really like the nose. I love the black eyes and how big they were. They reminded me of a crow, and this was supposed to remind me of the beak. Also, on this drawing, I worked at the body language. Like, kind of a creepy, reserved, real slender figure is what I was kind of wanting. But, like you can see in this guy, this is how I always draw figures. And I realized that when I drew him. Same with this guy, I always draw figures like that. So I was like, well, maybe I should work on the gesture a lot. And stuff like that, really being conscientious of what you're doing and what you do all the time. I feel like that's the thing I've keyed in on, is understanding, God, I draw that same thing the same way every single time, and I'm not getting any better at drawing new things, new poses. So really be conscientious of what you do a lot and what you do routinely, and try and deviate from that. Here's some more little creatures that I was drawing, and this is a character in the book that I'm going to be doing soon, probably on my Cintiq. And he's like a little rat goblin guy. So these were some little creatures I drew, and I took down some notes on maybe some stuff they could have, little garbage outfits, because these guys are into like making armor and trinkets and stuff like that out of human world garbage. And they take on the form of a rat in their world. This is another page where I wasn't trying to draw anything pretty. This was a totally horrible off drawing day, and I'm showing you this, guys, because you're not going to draw perfectly every time. For some reason, just like anything, you're either on and you're off. Look at this face. This is hideous. I mean, that is horrible drawing. But the fact that I drew this day you know, I'm like, God, I'm having an off day. Well, maybe I should try some different poses. So see how our arms kind of come out like this, and this one's foreshortened? Like, even though I didn't render that out, like understanding, you know, how that arm kind of, she's like swinging her arms in a walk. And this one, I drew the body at a little bit of an angle, and maybe how her hips kind of, you know, because I told you guys I was working on that, so I started working on it. And then this profile view happened, and you learn some stuff, like making this angle right here not so like protrudy like that, I think makes for a prettier feminine figure. And I just figured it out doing this drawing that one time, and now I know that forever. And I would have never known that had I not done this drawing and figured this out, and how pretty, like, you know, this face can be right here. Then I realized, man, I've been drawing a lot of like stagnant, straight up and down, more like concept character poses lately. And I used to draw a lot more dynamic drawings like this one, where there's a lot of movement and a lot of action happening. So I thought, hey, you know, I haven't done that in a while. I'm gonna kind of get back into that, because I know I'm gonna have to draw some scenes in my comic book that are really dynamic. And this is all from my head. I'm not looking at anything. This is just drawing. But there's a problem with that, is look how stiff he looks at the hips. Even though his body's really turning, you don't get a gist of like how agile he is. He's really like, I don't know, just stiff. And that's the problem with drawing from your imagination, is even though, like, as I was drawing this, I kind of was like, oh, well, it looks pretty good. It just doesn't look super natural. It doesn't look like just as good as it should if I had referenced something. And so that's why referencing things is, right here is where I'm kind of like, God, I need to reference stuff a lot more, because it's just not happening. It's not looking the way I want it to, and I'm not getting any better. Like, drawing this guy in this pose is something I could have drawn 5 years ago. But the rendering is probably better, but the pose is still stiff. So I realized I need to really start referencing and getting back to stuff. So I started doing these references. I have an app on my phone. It's a free app, and it just shows these musculature bodies. And this is good because it shows it, see the angle? Like, you're looking down at this guy? Like, that's hard to draw. And it's hard to understand how to draw. Understand, like, the way this form kind of looks going away from you. So I'm referencing more stuff here, referencing the shadows and referencing how the muscles and stuff like that work. Here's another reference of a picture that I just saw on Pinterest. Quick sketch. I don't have a lot of time for these sketches, so, you know, when I do something, I like to learn as much as I possibly can from it. And see the way her neck kind of comes down, so like really elegantly, and that's stuff that, you know, you pick up on the more you do it, the more referencing you do. And when I do drawings from my head in the future, I love this pose. It's really pretty, and it will definitely serve a purpose when I'm wanting to draw somebody looking vulnerable or somebody being compassionate or something like that. This is a good pose for that, and I'll remember that. So here's a really good example of how referencing can help you come up with really unique characters that have a lot of character. So this guy, I've been drawing, you guys have been watching me draw for a while now, and a lot of times my faces look the same, and so I'm like, you know what, I need to kind of break from my mold and do some different stuff. So I went on Pinterest and I typed in old people, like, and I'm like, you know, they have a lot of wrinkles and they have a lot of character to their face. So I just borrowed some different pictures I was looking at and put it into a face, and this guy has so much more character than a lot of my other drawings because I referenced stuff that I just couldn't pull from my imagination. And I love this drawing. I love how much character this little person has. A little traveler guy that kind of popped into my head, and I feel like this is a really cool drawing, and it wouldn't be so cool if I had just tried to pull it from my imagination and hadn't referenced anything. Same thing with this guy. A lot of people say this guy looks like Mike from Breaking Bad, which he totally does, but it was, again, I was just referencing old people's faces, and it wasn't Mike, it just kind of looks like him. And I just wanted to come up with something creative that day. I had a little bit more time to draw. You can tell the drawings that I have a little bit more time to spend on. But, you know, this guy just thought, hey, what if he had a little robot body and legs and stuff? But again, his face has so much more character. He's so much more unique than what I normally draw, because, you know, I looked at some different stuff. I looked at reality and, you know, what kind of lines an older person has, you know, how their cheeks kind of sag as they get older, stuff like that that I just don't remember, or you can't remember every single time you sit down and draw. Here's another guy. I didn't reference anything for this guy, but you can kind of see how like I took that little cheek thing that I did on the last drawing, I gave him some little whiskers. His pose is completely different because I really wanted to push myself to try different things. I added a kind of an interesting little arm angle there where he's holding the book out in front of him. He's got like a tree head, and this is just me being unique and trying to come up with unique ideas and not reference every time, because I feel like it's still important to go back and draw, figure out what you can draw from your imagination and push yourself in that direction. I feel like to get better at drawing, you have to just push yourself like in all different types of directions. Really grow, I guess. This guy I hate. A lot of people like this drawing. I was working on kind of a character for Jubei. I didn't reference anything for him, and his face just looks generic. His pose is terrible, just an off drawing. I rendered it all out, and I should have never have. I should have just, you know, not spent so much time on this thing, because it doesn't really help me to render it out. Everything about this drawing was terrible from the core of him, his body language, everything about it just doesn't work for me, so. But I'm glad I can understand that and see what I did wrong there. This was an interesting, again, referencing a face. Look how much more character that face has. It's not generic, it's, and the pose is from my imagination, but the face is really what gives it life, because the face is an Instagram follower. I wasn't drawing her, I just kind of looked at her face and what her mouth was doing in a certain picture, and that kind of like half smile smirk. That adds so much life to your characters, and I feel like you don't get that unless you reference. Didn't reference anything for this guy. He's a little bit generic, his body's stiff, but it still turned out good. I'm not saying you can't do good drawings if you don't reference, but still just not up to my standards for what I would consider a good drawing. Just generic kind of for me. Here I was drawing some realistic eyes, referencing eyes. That's the thing is, and I'm going to do another video on it in the future about drawing super realistically, and how, I guess it'll be a video on what I consider good art. For me, drawing super realistically isn't that really impressive. I don't feel like I enjoy that nearly as much when I'm following other artists or stuff as people who come up with unique ideas and still can draw somewhat realistically and kind of give their fantasy drawings a very real sense of who they are, rather than just drawing a picture that somebody does like of a famous person. That just doesn't impress me. But I was working on this stuff to get a better understanding of eyes. I feel like when you do reference really and try and draw really realistic, you get a different understanding of how things work and a better understanding of how things work, so that you can translate that into your fantasy drawings. A lot of people like this one. Again, the face I didn't like because it's so generic looking. I didn't reference anything for this. I was just drawing one day, and I liked the gears and how everything worked. I just didn't like the face because it's just so artificial to me. It doesn't look like, it just doesn't, I don't know. I mean, it has emotion. I can tell it's sad. It just doesn't seem believable to me. And I think that's a key with what I appreciate. And it's totally my opinion and who I am as an artist, but it doesn't sit well with me. I can't believe it as a real thing. Here is a really good example of horrible drawing that just happens sometimes. You're not gonna draw really good every time. I was kind of just referencing Elena for a little bit. She was sitting there and I had a picture and I was just like, terrible drawing, yeah. So I love this drawing. I referenced a little girl that had a sad face, and I kind of just put everything together and love the reference. Look how much more character this face has. So referencing can do so much for you. One thing I learned in this drawing is how a little girl's face, see these cheeks? How they come, they're really wide because how fat their little chubby cheeks are. And that's something that, you know, this drawing helped me realize. Like, so when I'm drawing little kids or little girls from now on, I have a better idea of how to draw the face and the jawline. Rather than making it all sharp and pointy, that's a bad way to draw them. This is a good way. So I really like this drawing though. Sometimes, you know, you have drawings like this where you're like, oh my gosh, I suck at art, and then the next day you draw this and you're like, oh, I'm not so bad, this turned out pretty good. So And that's kind of where I left off. That's where my sketchbook is right now. So yeah, nice. I hope you guys enjoyed that little update. I plan on doing that maybe once a month, is updating, you know, because I probably do, I don't know, 10 to 15 drawings a month, somewhere around there. So I'll probably do little videos kind of referencing those. Thanks for watching, guys, and if you liked the video, subscribe and check out my last video too.